So as I mentioned, first things first, we will talk about the Mississippi State game. Alabama does win the game in Starkville by a score of 88-84. This was a very good game. This was a game that honestly was similar to how I expected for a long portion of this game. I thought the score was going to be pretty close to my original prediction. But it really felt like Alabama, had some problems at times, but really, no matter if they had a problem or what, they were able to kind of keep Mississippi State at arm's length for the majority of the game. Even if Mississippi State was able to cut it down to one, or Mississippi State even took the lead a couple of times, Alabama was able to just find that play and find what it took to win the game. The other thing that Alabama did in this game that's really probably the most important thing is that Alabama shot the ball pretty well, right? A lot has been said about how Alabama's three-point shooting this season has been pretty bad, right? Alabama this season, by and large, has not been a great three-point shooting team. But if you look at the percentages, right, so I have the numbers pulled up here. Alabama's 33.2% for the entire season. But if you break that out into conference-only games, they're actually 36.3, which is fifth in the SEC, right? That's a big difference, right? And a lot of that has to do with a guy like Chris Youngblood, right? There was a period of time when you didn't have Latrell Wrightsell and you didn't have Chris Youngblood. And those are two of your best shooters on the team. When Latrell was playing, he was a great shooter. Now that Chris is kind of coming back into form, he's been a much better shooter. We'll talk a little bit more about his shooting because he was a huge difference for Alabama in this game. And if you can get a game like this out of Chris Youngblood, every so often or just, closer to this on a night in, night out basis, the ceiling of Alabama just raises that much more. This is the guy you expected when you got an American Conference Player of the Year as a transfer, right? So the big story out of last game was Mark Sears. And it was that Mark Sears was benched in the second half. And, Nate, didn't really address it in the post game, but did address it in the midweek that Mark had some really good weeks or really good practices and, was fully expecting him to have a good game. And Mark did, right? Maybe not his greatest game ever, but a very, very solid game. Mark finishes with 17, 9, and 6, including 3 offensive rebounds. Nate also made a point that Mohamed Diabate does win the hard hat in this one, but Mark was very actually close to winning the hard hat in this game. Mark did a lot to be able to help out his teammates. To me, it really feels like a lot of the emphasis in practice toward Mark is not that he doesn't need to score, but that he also needs to facilitate, right? Drive at times to be able to kick out. And it really felt like at times Mark was overemphasizing that, right? Making sure to, drive to the hole, kick out to Jaron, kick out to Chris, kick out to LeBaron or Aiden, right? And I think that's where the assist numbers are coming from. He did have 7 turnovers. I wouldn't worry about it, but it is what it is, right? I'm definitely not going to harp on the fact that he had the turnovers. Still a positive assist to turnover ratio. Just him having the ball in his hands, the amount he did, and him, moving the ball around as much as he did. That's pretty common, right? To have a game that has some extra turnovers against a good defensive team. Not the most shocking thing ever. Cam Matthews has 3 steals. Riley Kugel has 3 steals. Some guys that we know are really, really good athletes, really good defensive players, had good games. So it's not the most surprising thing. Obviously, you don't want to see it continue on, but I wouldn't harp too much on it for this specific game. Some guys that obviously I think had great games, and like I said, it really has to start with Chris Youngblood. Chris Youngblood goes into the starting lineup again. We talked about him being in the starting lineup for the LSU game because LeBaron Philon had a little bit of an ankle issue. Seems like maybe the ankle's either still going on or Nate liked the starters that went out there last game. So Chris Youngblood does get the start. And Chris, makes the most of it. The only negative thing you could say about Chris's performance is he does go 0 of 2 at the line in one of his times at the line. He goes 2 of 2 the next time, for 50% on the day, but that's not something you're expecting too much out of Chris. But he does go 7 of 10 from three-point land. And they were some of the most important threes just because of the timing, right? It really felt like the threes were hit in super clutch time, honestly similar to Grant Nelson. Grant Nelson actually only goes 1 of 5, but the one puts Alabama up by 3. at the end of the game. So it is a situation where maybe the shooting, by some of the players not named Chris, Mark, or Aiden was not the best, right? Chris, Mark, and Aiden combined for 13 of your 15 made attempts, which is what you expect, right? Those are your 3 volume shooters, your 3 better shooters, especially with Chris taking the spot of where Latrell was. But Grant does hit the 3, a really timely 3 that helps him in this game, and it really helps Alabama succeed. Another guy who I thought played a pretty good game as well is Cliff Amori, right? There was a huge difference when he was on the floor versus when he wasn't, and it wasn't just blocking shots. He does have a block in this game. I think Grant's actually attributed with 3. But the other thing is just how much he affected the people driving to the basket. He affects the final shot that, Mississippi State misses kind of a point-blank layup to go up 1 near the end of the game. Cliff definitely affected that shot. I don't know if he fully blocked it, but he definitely affected the shot. There's also a point when Alabama, looks like Mississippi State's going to have a pretty easy drive to the basket and pretty easy score, and Cliff's able to get a steal, and that's actually something that really impressed me about this one is his ability to kind of, use his hands and not foul and actually get some steals. He has 2 steals in this game. That was something that, again, what Cliff does with his length and his athleticism is definitely a difference maker. He plays 20 minutes in this game, and like I said, I think there was definitely a difference when he's on the floor versus when he isn't. The other guy that you obviously have to talk about, he won the hard hat. I already mentioned him, but is Mohamed Diabate. And it feels like every game over the last few, we've been saying, hey, you got to talk about Mo. You got to talk about Mo. You got to talk about Mo. And this one actually wasn't even an offensive performance. He actually only scores 4 points. He goes 2 of 5 from the line, 1 of 2 from the field. But he had 7 offensive rebounds. He finishes with 9 rebounds, 2 assists, a block, a steal. But he has 7 offensive rebounds. And possibly none bigger than the rebound on the free throw when Alabama misses at the end of the game to go up, or I guess to go up 2. Mo gets the rebound and then hits one of the free throws to be able to, pull the lead a little bit farther. And, right, that's one of your biggest offensive rebounds of the game. That's not his only rebound, right, but that's as important as any others. So I think that's, another guy you have to talk about. Like I said, the scoring maybe isn't as good as it was in some of the previous games, but definitely good nonetheless. And then finally, the last guy we'll talk about is a combination of like Grant and Aiden, right? We've talked about Aiden Holloway over the past few games that he's just continuing that streak of double-digit games. And a lot of that has to do with his shooting. It's just been really good. He has 3 of 7 from deep in this game. He has 2 assists. Wasn't as big of a defensive factor in this game as he has been in some others, but definitely played okay defense. But some of the guards, I think, from a defensive standpoint, were just overshadowed by how elite, and I can't go without saying this, how elite Josh Hubbard was in this game. Josh Hubbard made every shot. He really felt like anything on the floor, he was liable to go in, no matter who we had on him. At times, Alabama had Jaron Stevenson on him. At times, Alabama had Mo Diabate on him. We had Chris Youngblood on him. We had Park Sears on him. We tried all different people to combat what Josh Hubbard was able to do, and he still puts up 38 points. He was by far the majority of their offense outside of Keyshawn Murphy. They kind of had a little bit of a 2-man game going where Josh Hubbard and Keyshawn Murphy were able to get some easy rolls to the basket for Murphy. So he ends up with 18. But like I said, Hubbard was absolutely elite in this game. We knew he was going to be a difference maker. Obviously, you don't ever expect somebody to score that many points. He does go 8 of 13 from 2, 6 of 15 from 3, but that's still 40% from 3, right? It's just still a efficient night scoring. Maybe not the greatest night ever, but a very efficient night scoring. And, Mississippi State definitely had the ball in his hands when it mattered the most. I think that overall, Alabama, when they have the rematch in Tuscaloosa, Alabama's going to just have to figure out what they can do. To stop the 2-man game, because I thought Keyshawn Murphy was able to get just some easy baskets that you don't fully expect. And then also, obviously stop Josh Hubbard. You can have him score, 15 or 20, but 38 is just unacceptable. He's an elite scorer, and he's the majority of their offense at times. So it's not, the most unheard of thing to see him score 15 or 20. He's going to take the volume of shots it's going to take to score that. But when he's having a game like he had, and he was just feeling it for a huge percentage of this game, it really felt like anytime the ball left his hands, it probably was going in, right? And that's what you can't let a shooter get in the rhythm of. It's honestly similar to the Chris Youngblood side on our front, right? Chris Youngblood got into such a rhythm. Anytime a three went off his hand, the assumption was he was making it, right? And that's really what it felt like for Josh Hubbard as well. Credit to him, right? Alabama was not able to control him in any way. But Alabama does enough to win this game in Starkville. Nate Oates has not lost in Starkville. He's 7-0. I guess that's 7 in a row. That's 3 in a row in Starkville. Nate Oates has not lost to Jans, and just an absolutely incredible game. Really credit to the guys. They've done a really, really good job this season going on the road and winning in tough environments, and they were able to do it in this game. So that's what we have to say. Like I said, really, really great game. Alabama was able to win despite the elite performance by Hubbard. But, credit to the guys. They were able to draw down, do what they needed to do, get the rebound like by Mo at the end of the game, do what it takes to win, and come out with a win in this game. So that's what we wanted to talk about for the Mississippi State game. Like I said, not too crazy much. Just wanted to kind of go through what all I think happened and some of the things. I know, like I said, the Mark thing was kind of beat into the ground. I don't think it's the most crazy thing we need to keep talking about, but credit to Mark. He had a pretty good game. Like I said, I'm not too worried about the turnovers in this one. Credit to him. So we will move on to the Georgia game, and we will get out of here. So